Today I want to share with you 9 mistakes new backpackers tend to make on their first time out. Well, folks, really excited for this video. You know, it's getting back into the warmer season and it's time to get onto the trail and do day hikes and backpacking trips. And I love backpacking trips, been doing it for years with my family and have loved every minute of it. Now, I believe this list can apply to anybody starting out in backpacking, but to give you a little perspective on how we backpack, we tend to load up with gear. My gear tends to be between maybe around 50 pounds. I tend to go heavy because I usually reviewing gear, so I'm taking camera equipment, supplies, doubling up on certain things because I'll be testing them, and so that's something that I'm always doing. But we tend to backpack to a location, hang out for a few days, and then backpack back out. We are not backpacking through hikers at this point. I may do that in future years, but this is more for people who you're wanting to backpack to a location, or maybe you're backpacking 1 or 2 locations for a couple days, but not somebody who you're trying to crank out 100 miles, you know, in 3 days, and you're going super fast and super lightweight. So that's kind of our style. That's how we do it, just to kind of give you some data as we jump into these mistakes that I tend to see new backpackers make, or that I myself have made when I first started getting into the backpacking scene years ago. All right, so we're gonna kick this off with one of the most important ones. Don't go bankrupt trying to go ultra light and buying the lightest items on the market. You can easily drop $2,000 on backpacking equipment by trying to drop every single little ounce, going with a tent that's, a pound and a half versus the 2.5 pound one, and the sleeping bag that shaves 3 ounces, and the cookware that's 2 ounces less in titanium than the aluminum version. You know, those type of things are very easy to do and often get suckered into doing, but you'll break the bank and you'll go bankrupt trying to do that. Particularly on your first couple times out, find what works for you. There are certain areas where I absolutely try to cut every ounce, and there are other areas where I'm willing to sacrifice for a little extra weight to either save cost or give me a little bit more durability. So really kind of think through those, and just because you aren't the lightest weighted guy in your gear or girl doesn't mean that you're some kind of idiot and you're gonna lose out and be worn out when you reach the top of the trail or your destination for the day. You're gonna be worn out no matter what. Number 2, I know people that go out and they go backpacking either by themselves or just a buddy or a friend or a couple, and they don't really tell anybody where they're going, or they're just like, yeah, I'm going backpacking for the weekend, or I'll be in kind of like this national park, but they don't give somebody who knows where they're going to be information. And that's something that's very vital and very important. So if you are going backpacking, and this is particularly one of your first times, even if you're going with very experienced people, let somebody know where you're going and how long your trip will be. Number 3, they don't think about their feet. Here's the deal. When you go backpacking, you are going over hard terrain, usually longer than you tend to usually walk possibly or hike in a day, and you often have much heavier loads than your feet are used to. So people kind of forget that, and their last thought is, oh, well, I got some tennis shoes, you know, I'll rock those, or, you know, I'll pick up some sort of shoe, you know, last minute, and, you know, I'll just get my, you know, gym socks and we'll call it good. And they get to the end of the trail for the night, and man, the feet are blistered, they're exhausted, your feet are jacked up. Once or twice I've worn shoes that were not the right setup for my situation or the terrain, and I regretted it, and it exhausted my whole body because my feet were beat up and exhausted. So I highly recommend making sure that you have the right type of footwear, particularly socks. Get the right type of socks, and think about Body Glide. I use this all the time. My family uses it, buddies and friends. You rub it all over your feet or other areas where there might be chafing, and it will alleviate many blisters and raw feeling on many a trip and many a trail. So I always use that, and look for other ingredients, and think of ways also that you can have extra pairs of socks or sandals that you can air out your feet, so you're not constantly stuck in the same pair of shoes and the same pair of socks, and let those feet breathe because they'll also swell. Just all those things to think about when you're out there on the trail, and don't think last about your feet, but you should be thinking first about your feet. Next up, make sure to inspect borrowed gear. Oftentimes when you're first getting into backpacking, maybe you don't have all the equipment that you would need, and you have friends or family members who are willing to loan you some gear items, possibly a tent, maybe a cook stove, backpack even. Make sure to inspect the equipment. put the tent up. Make sure it has all the tent pegs and poles and that there isn't a tear in it and that the rain fly isn't missing. Make sure that you put on the backpack and load it all out so that there's not a buckle broken, or you realize, wow, you loaned me a pack, but I'm a large to extra large and this is a small to medium. This isn't gonna fit me and I'm gonna hate my life. You know, whatever it may be, a stove, make sure that it'll actually turn on and like functions properly. The worst thing you could do, and then a big mistake, would be to borrow somebody's gear item without having tested it prior to getting out there into the backcountry. Next mistake, not having the right medical equipment. I know so many people, I run into them on the trail, I've had to help a few people on the trail before, or I talk to a friend or a buddy that's going with me and I ask them, hey, what's your med kit look like? You know, and it's like a little plastic boo-boo kit with like 3 Band-Aids and, you know, like a little pouch of antibiotic cream. I mean, that's it. Have a proper medical kit that has not only Band-Aids, but antiseptics, that would have eye drops. What happens if there's something gets in your eye? You can rinse out and flush out an eye much better than trying to, you know, slosh a water bottle and gross style or whatever in it. Something that has some sort of antihistamine as well as painkillers, something that you could make a sling or a splint out of if you fell and broke your arm or dislocated something or injured a foot or a leg and had to create some sort of a splint or some sort of a sling to get back to civilization, as well as some sort of, in my opinion, coagulant to be able to stop excessive bleedings, as well as compresses to be able to handle those type of bad injuries. Maybe you fall and impale your arm or shoulder into a branch or a stump or something like that, or just a tool that you might be using up on your trip and you get injured in some way, and then you're stuck out in the middle of nowhere relying either on somebody else or if you're by yourself, and could be a life and death situation very quickly. So make sure that you're trained, but you also have a really well stocked out medical kit. And if you're going in a group, make sure everyone knows where that medical kit is. Another mistake that new backpackers make, and hikers, is breaking in new gear on the trail, particularly packs and shoes. Those two things are a must, that you have to try those out ahead of time. And the easiest way to do that is, if you're gonna get some sort of shoe that you're planning on wearing on your backpacking trip, wear them around town, maybe try and find a little trail nearby that you can walk on, do some jumping jacks, you know, do what you need to do to get some good flex and see if these are too small, if after several hours are they starting to make your feet ache, those type of things, as well as your backpack. Load up your backpack with your gear, make sure it's adjusted properly. And again, even if you need to go take a 3-mile walk around your neighborhood just to get a feel for it, is this rubbing me, you know, on my neck some weird way? Is this killing my back? How is this suspension system really working? And do I need to take this back and get a different bag altogether? Something that is a must. So break in that new gear as much as possible ahead of time. Don't think that you're just gonna hop on the trail and that pack's gonna fit perfect, or those shoes aren't gonna cause any blisters or any pain. Break them in as much as possible prior to getting out there on the trail. And I do want to take a brief time out to do 2 things. One, let you know that I'm gonna plan on doing it the same weekend, posting a video sharing with you some of my favorite gear for beginning backpackers, where I actually tell you, like, these are a couple of my favorite backpacks and stoves and tents and other gear items, sleeping bags, those type of things. I will be throwing that up this same weekend, so check that out on the channel, Gideon's Tactical channel, and I will try and throw a link in the description below as well. But also throughout this video, if you are looking for some different gear items, I have links in the description below over to Amazon, Blade HQ, backcountry.com, as well as Knockaround Sunglass Company if you're looking for sunglasses for that trail time. Those are great items and great links that we offer to you below. I'll have a lot of great item lists for backpacking on those hyperlinks. And that also helps us continue to make the content. We're throwing up 2 to 4 videos every single week here on the channel. When you use those hyperlinks, helps me get out here and make content just like this, and gear reviews and all the different things that we do here. So I just thank you for using those hyperlinks. And if you're watching this and you're not a current subscriber, we're throwing up videos all the time about backpacking, camping, hiking, the outdoors in general, tools, reviews, and I invite you to subscribe and become part of the GT family, because we're throwing up these videos every single week. Next mistake. New backpackers tend to underestimate the amount of calories that they're gonna burn on the trail. You will burn a freaking ton, up to double the amount that you normally do when you are backpacking, depending on the trail intensity, the longevity, as well as your load. And oftentimes you can get up there and realize, wow, I did not pack enough food, and you're out of food and you're dying of hunger because you're burning so many calories, much more than your body is used to. And then you start to deal with headaches and fatigue and things like that, and can make the experience overall somewhat frustrating and not as enjoyable. So whatever you think maybe you need, I would say add like at least a quarter, if not half as much to what you think you might need. I love to do like a dehydrated meal, but I make sure that I have like a power bar as well that I estimate with that dehydrated meal for my meals, just so that I know that I have more than enough. I usually bring a little bit back with me, but I'd rather have too much than not enough. Now on the flip side, new backpackers can easily bring too much stuff, not only in food, but also in other things. So it's hard to know when you're starting out, but I would encourage you to maybe on the other items, think about dialing back just slightly. You know, this is what I tend to do. Let's say I'm going out on the trail for 3 days. I'll tend to take 4 pairs of socks. You don't need to take 6 pairs of socks. I'll tend to take maybe 4 pairs of underwear just so I have a spare. I won't take, 6. Usually I'll do maybe 1 spare pair of pants. That's it. Those type of things. And I'll plan on taking like 1 spare shirt, and I'll just swap them in and out, rinse them off, do whatever I need to do, and try and cut down on clothing as well as maybe gear supplies. You're maybe concerned about the amount of illumination, so you have a handheld flashlight, and you have a lantern, and you have a headlamp, and maybe you have a backup. It's like you don't necessarily need to do that. A good headlamp and an emergency lightweight flashlight is more than enough for any backpacking trip I've ever been on. So just kind of weigh in, particularly if you're going with somebody, talk to them. Try to cut back where you can on the gear so you're not carrying twice as much gear and weight as you need. And finally, underestimating the environmental conditions that you might be going into. One thing that I'm willing to, going back to that weight, sacrifice weight for what it will do for me is a tarp. Here in the Rocky Mountains, we get hit with rainstorms in the mountains almost every day. And I'd rather have a tarp to hang out under than to be stuck in my tent for 3 to 4 hours while we're up there enjoying the wilderness. And it gives me a more dry space to be able to cook, hang out, and have fun. So I'm willing to sacrifice that for a tarp. The temperature swings that you might be dealing with, the snow that you might be dealing with, the different types of environment. So you might want to consider looking at weather reports, but also trail conditions, and it's better to go safer and have a little bit extra layers that you can layer with, better rain resistant capabilities than maybe you think you need, just so that you have enough to be able to handle environmental situations so you're not frigid, wet, and cold when you're out there in the wilderness. And so guys, with that, I hope that you've enjoyed this list. I hope it's just helped you out for you new backpackers, as well as you veterans as well. I hope some of these things have just helped remind you as you get psyched up for this coming backpacking season. As always, guys, we really appreciate when you come over here, check us out on Instagram, Facebook, all the social media, and don't forget to subscribe again. We really appreciate that. And finally, guys, always remember, stay equipped, stay prepared, and we'll see you out there.